Hello and welcome to Skincare Confidential, a podcast supporting the Science of Skincare Summit, an annual educational event occurring September 5th through the 7th in 2025 in Austin, Texas. My name is Dr. Ted Lain. I am a board-certified dermatologist and your host for today's episode. But it is my pleasure to introduce you to someone you probably haven't heard of before, but is very important in the skincare industry. His name is Carl de Ruiz. Now, Carl is the Senior Head of Regulatory and Business Development in Beauty and Care for DSM North America. But what I'm most interested about and why I've asked Carl to be on today is because his company, DSM, is involved in bringing a brand new filter, a sunscreen filter, to the United States. Carl, we haven't had a new filter. Well, I can't even remember. How long has it been since we've had a new filter, Carl?
Well, you have to think back a long, long time. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
We haven't had a new UV filter in the United States in 26 years, which is
26
an
years.
awfully long time, considering that we have the least number of filters available for the formulation of sunscreens ingredients as compared to the rest of the world,
Yeah.
where, so it's been a long time. And I've been working on this tirelessly on and off since actually 1997. And regulations have changed, procedures have changed, and FDA is currently actually reviewing a new filter, which I've introduced as part of the new regulatory process that was instituted in 2021.
Okay, so let's go back. So a lot to unpack there. So exactly correct, right? We have 16 UV filters that are approved in the United States. There are 27, for example, in the EU. Okay, so
Yeah.
we are far behind, right, Carl?
Yeah, and it's important to realize not all those 16 filters are used.
Right.
The way you look at it right now in terms of the regulations, FDA has approved 2 filters, which are minimal
That,
filters as generally regarded as safe and effective. And while there are a total of 16, of those 16, not all of them are used by industry for one reason or another in terms of either smell or
right.
compatibility.
Okay.
It boils down to maybe a total of 7 filters, of which FDA is requiring more testing for of those
Yeah.
that haven't been approved. Very complicated
Yes.
situation.
So just to expound on that, right there, in 2021, the CARES Act, which came out of COVID, right,
Mhm.
came out and said, okay, look, sunscreens are regulated as OTC drugs, but in particular for these different filters that you have to go back and do some more testing on all the filters because there's this loud, probably in my view, baseless concern about these filters having, endocrine disruption and or other, deleterious effects on the body. And I think the FDA was responding to these concerns saying, hey, we need to get more testing done on these filters, except for zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, which is, as you mentioned, the two that are generally recognized as safe and effective, or GRAS.
Yeah.
And those two are essentially approved, right? The rest are allowed to be marketed and used as long as there is progress being made on their testing, especially, in human toxicology testing.
Yeah.
So, right,
That's
Carl?
that's that's correct, and
Yeah.
this whole process goes back to 1972
Mm,
in terms of the sunscreen monograph, and the latest iteration, of course, is the 2021 CARES Act, which reformed OTC regulations, and now FDA is requiring, based upon their testing of off-the-shelf sunscreen products, showing that they have an absorption level of about zero point 0.5 nanograms per mil, which they believe is the level at which further testing is required. The crazy thing about it is that we've used this on humans
mhm.
since the monograph began in '78, and it's been globally. All these filters have been globally utilized. Yet FDA is now, because of the fact of they're taking products off the shelf and doing in vitro penetration tests indicating a level above zero point 0.5 nanograms. They indicate, if industry must, for those ingredients that are not GRAS, conduct further testing, which includes dermal penetration tests,
Mm-hmm.
carcinogenicity testing in animals, which are long-term studies, and developmental reproductive toxicity studies in animals as well, in order to ascertain whether or not the data derived from both animal studies and then also human studies, because you're also now under the mandate to conduct maximum usage trials, which are basically
Hmm.
pharmacokinetic trials,
Hmm.
to see what the absorption is on a variety of different formulations that are anticipated to be on the market for each single ingredient. So this all results in a program that industry is now facing, which involves a very complicated series of tests that are required in order to keep these products continue on the market. Um, and FDA has indicated, well, if you show that you're making progress and you commit to doing the testing, we'll renew what's called the deferral from rulemaking every year for each of the ingredients that are being supported, so that they can continue to be used in the United States. In the meanwhile, the rest of the world marches on using in silico, in vitro testing, and modern toxicological methods to approve new filters, which are much more efficient. We use less; they're more broad spectrum. They have less environmental profiles, um, as compared to those that have been used now for almost half a century, if not more than half a century. So it's a very difficult situation for public health in the United States. And what's happening is people are going into the internet. When they go abroad, they shop for products which are approved elsewhere. They like the feel, the texture, and they'll only use what they like. If they don't like it, they're not going to use it. People of color are at a disadvantage in terms of a lot of these filters which are approved. They're white cast. They cast a white sheen, and people don't like it. And as a result, they don't use it. What happens? Public health suffers because people will not use the product that's there to protect them against skin cancer and photo aging. So it's a really difficult situation, and it's even more compounded because a lot of these consumer products with tests, which sell sunscreens, are global companies, and they have non-animal testing policies. And here's the kicker: in most of the world, sunscreens are cosmetics, and they're subject to animal bans test bans. In the United States, they're drugs, and they're subject to FDA's animal testing policies. So you have this conflict going on that is currently putting at risk a lot of the ingredients that are currently available in terms of will they or will they not be supported given non-animal testing approaches, which are global in nature and which are
Right.
supported by consumers and society as a whole. Yet FDA has not yet embraced these modern toxicological methods, new approach methods.
It's a conundrum, isn't it? Especially for these multinational corporations who, as you say, have really kind of restricted themselves to non-animal testing
Yeah.
correctly, in my view. And yet, if they want to get one of these new filters, I mean, they're not new, one of these filters from the EU, which we know have long UV protection, which is exactly what we need for reduction in the incidence of skin cancer, not only for the health but also the beauty of the skin. We absolutely need longer spectrum, more broad spectrum filters. They are available, but because of the corporate policies, correct corporate policies, it's very difficult for these companies to get them approved in the United States. So
Yeah,
to your
yeah.
point, we're at a fork in the road.
Yeah, and there's no incentive to do these tests because basically those companies that do the testing and stand up to do the right thing
Yeah.
are then undercut by other companies who will not do the testing and then will manufacture these ingredients on the basis of United States pharmacopoeia purity standards, and then will sell them at a cost lower than that of the companies that have done the testing simply because they have not invested in the testing. So it's an uneven playing field, and there's no recognition at all by FDA that this is a commodity business. There's no, for the existing filters, they've been used for many years. There's no patents. There's nothing to protect them. They're
Mm-hmm.
USP grade, and and basically companies buy the lowest cost ingredient in order to maximize sales, as long as they meet the purity and standards of USP, which is the foundation for all OTC drugs. So it's very complicated, and there's so many moving parts to this that we've been kind of advocating with Congress to change the laws and recognize this, and I've been making incremental progress, and along with other in the industry, and we will continue to do this to see if we can, change the laws to allow for, these new alternative toxicological methods that are used globally, even by the EPA in the United States to regulate chemicals in the environment and industry. And yet FDA is kind of stuck in this 1970s world where, animal testing is a gold standard. And change is definitely needed. The good thing is that we're the only company that has invested in bringing a new filter to the market, and FDA is under an OTC monograph order request application, which basically gives FDA all the information that they require, all the must studies of pharmacokinetics, the penetration, the carcinogen studies, the developmental reproductive toxicity studies that were done mostly in the 1990s and early 2000s, where these ingredients were introduced into the rest of the world. Um, and right now they are reviewing Bemotrizinol, Parsol Shield, or Tinosaur as it's also known as a trade name. And we're currently on schedule to get an approval or a determination of generally regarded as safe and effective by March 7th of 2026.
Wow.
So it's been a long, long, long road. And at least we have some indication that FDA may be open to accepting this new filter based upon the review, which is currently undergoing. So at least one, but I don't expect there'll be any other filters introduced if the regulations are not changed in the United States.
Yeah, so just to backtrack a little bit, so bemotrizinol or BEMT, BEMT, is known across the pond as Tinosorb, right? Uh, it,
Well, it's a trade name is Tinosaur
trade
best
name of
or
Tinosorb
Parsol Shield, yeah, and it's
or
been used.
Parsol Shield. Okay,
Yeah,
and it's been used for 20 years, I think, in
it was
here.
first
Is that right?
approved in Europe under the European sunscreen regulations in 2000.
2000, so 24 years, 25 years almost.
Yep,
Okay.
yeah,
All right. So it has a very long history of use,
hmm,
probably a very long safety history as well.
yep,
Used ex-US, and here we are 25, maybe 26 years later, and in hopefully, God willing, fingers crossed, salt over the shoulder, knocking on wood. What else do we need to do?
yep.
We'll get this approved for use in the United States, and we will finally have a chemical long UV blocking broad spectrum filter that, as you mentioned so correctly before, will be great for public health, in particular those with skin of color who in whom it is difficult to find correctly shaded sunscreens to match their natural skin tone, because we have so many issues with the white cast. And so
Hmm.
not only for those of us who are not happy, who have lighter skin tones, who aren't happy with the mineral sunscreens and the way they feel and look, and the overall experience with them, but also for those of us with darker skin tones, it will make it a lot easier to use these sunscreens and know that we're getting the broad spectrum coverage, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And the fact is that there'll be three GRAS ingredients:
Mm-hmm.
titanium dioxide, zinc oxide,
Finally.
and BMT. And
Yeah.
then the rest of the filters are still subject to testing. And
Yeah.
whether or not they're supported, it's a question mark. And probably not all, maybe a few, but that even reduces the number of filters more. But at least having bemotrizinol together with the mineral filters
Mm-hmm.
allows for more aesthetically pleasing brands that are
Absolutely.
sheerer. And if it is your selection to only use grass ingredients, then you have options in that area that
Yeah.
go beyond what's available today, while you can still use the other ingredients, which are very important. And the crazy thing, there's only one UVA filter, and that's avobenzone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's still requiring further testing,
Mm-hmm.
despite having sent FDA tons of information that has been generated worldwide and data reviewed by experts in the field by in development, reproductive, carcinogenicity, et cetera, which have indicated, well, there really is no concern, given there's no genotoxicity with these ingredients. But yet, FDA is still saying, well, this is the approach. These are the studies that are required, and you have to go through the list and provide them all before we can make a determination. And that's where we are right now, unfortunately.
Now, Carl, we were having a discussion a few weeks ago about how DSM will benefit from the approval of this filter, and review that with us, because honestly, at this point, it's almost a public health service that this company is doing.
It is, we're kind of a Dutch Swiss company and kind of crazy. I think, right now, the investment in this ingredient over the last 26 has been, since we've taken we approached FDA in 2018, indicating, well, you guys reviewed this back in under the time and extent application, and then on the Sunscreen Innovation Act, and provided comments in terms of what was necessary. We want to fill the data gaps. And since 2018, we had to file an IND because you can't do tests on humans on
Mhm.
unapproved new drugs in the U.S. We've conducted all the clinical studies. We've done two metabolism studies in animals, which are required by FDA in order to do a risk assessment and a marginal safety assessment. Uh, and as a result, we've spent almost $7 million in that period of time, and now provided that. In addition to, under the OMAR, this is now a fee based review. We provided $537,000 fee for them to review what they've already reviewed twice before, and then are now reviewing in 17.5 months. So this is absolutely insane if you ask me, but
Right.
it is the only way, and we're committed to this as DSM Firmenich, um, and we believe in public health, and this is something that I've been working on half my life at least, and
Yeah.
I firmly believe it. And DSM also believe that it's necessary because if nobody does it, public health will suffer. So we'll do it, and we're almost there. We're almost at the goal post, um, and we're still sending FDA information requests, data almost monthly.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we're going to be in a good position because basically they need to show Congress that they can approve a filter in the United States. And
Yeah.
we've done more studies on a UV filter than any other company on the planet. It's tantamount to an NDA for an oncology
Hmm.
drug, and it's kind of crazy if you look at what the indications are in terms of on the OTC drug label and the usage as
So
compared to a RX drug.
once it's finally approved, what kind of exclusivity will DSM have for
Well,
Parsol?
we're hoping that under the new OMAR regulations, FDA has advised us that the company, the first introduced a new OTC active ingredient, will get 18 months exclusivity, having done the clinical studies,
Yeah.
which is not the case in NDAs, but it is for OTCs. So
Sure.
if that's the case, then we'll have 18 months exclusivity, which is really nothing
Right.
because it takes 18 months to really create an OTC drug product, given the stability test and then the formulation requirements, SPF testing, and everything in order to get to market. So, and the thing is, FDA has never done this before. So we don't really know how this is going to work out because they don't know either. So we're setting
Okay.
a lot of precedents here, right?
Okay.
This is something that has never been done before, and they're really happy because they can toot their horn and say, hey, we're doing something new, and it is important for public health, and that's why we're committed. So once this date comes on the 7th, we actually have a couple meetings before that period of time. We have a meeting in June where we'll have a debrief on everything that we've submitted. And then what happens is, since this is a public rulemaking, none of the data is protected. So it's all available for anybody who wants it for free online on usgov.com. And that's another problem in terms of being no protection or confidentiality, but we won't go there. Then basically FDA will issue what's called a proposed rule, and that will be published in the Federal Register. And that will be subject to public comments, right? So the public in general will have 30 days, I think, or 45 days, I can't remember, to comment on what they have indicated. It's a proposed rule to include Bemotrizinol at 6% under the OTC monograph. And here's all the data, and what does the public think? And then the public has, I think, 30 days to respond in terms of what they think. And then FDA gets to review all that data and make a determination. And that's the next step. So that's where we're still going towards. And the data package which we submitted includes not only pharmacokinetics, clinical toxicology, but it also includes environmental
Hmm.
assessments, right? So
Great.
fully loaded,
Fully loaded. Yeah.
and nothing has been done to this extent ever, and I
Mhm.
can't see it ever being done again, given the time it's taken to do this. But once that's done, FDA will issue a final rule on the date, and from that date, it will be allowed to be marketed. But then you need to kind of do an NDC listing before you
Sure.
can import it, and then companies can use it in their products. So it'll take another month or so before companies can begin to really generate final products. So it'll be sometime in 2026, knocking on wood. But FDA is very, very excited that we have stepped up and are doing this and have indicated that to us because nobody has, and it's a way for them to show that their new program is working, even though it might be short-lived in terms of the number of ingredients.
Yeah.
But as I said, the world marches on, and new ingredients are being introduced, including we are introducing new molecules on a fairly rapid pace globally as well, which is a lot more easy to do than in the
Hmm.
United States.
Yeah. I work in the pharmaceutical environment as well, and there are drugs that are approved in 30 to 40 countries outside of the US that have no issues with their label, nothing on their label that would worry anybody in the US. They have contents on the label that are worrisome. And so it really hampers these drugs in the United States in terms of how widely they're used. And yet outside the US, they're used as first line because they just don't have the same warnings and precautions or content on their important safety information or even black box warnings that are available
Yeah,
that ex-US do not have. So there's definitely a difference in the way the FDA handles the approval of both drugs and OTC drugs and even going on to beauty care products as well.
yeah.
So just to kind of level set this, we have a Dutch Swiss company who has invested 7 million plus 20 plus years to improve the health of the American public. Is that about right?
That is correct. We have stepped up as the only company to do this, relying on past data generations by my former company in 1990s and 2000s, which was Ciba-Geigy, which was bought by BASF.
Okay.
And that data didn't go anywhere, but it's in the public docket.
Okay.
And utilizing that data along with all the new data that was generated by DSM that came about as a result of the CARES Act and the guidances that FDA issues for must studies and GRAS determinations and safety and
Yeah.
efficacy studies. That whole pile of paper or electronic data is now being reviewed by FDA for the first time to get this approved.
Yeah.
And it's exciting because, it's always, it's scary to be the first, but somebody has to do it. And I think we're doing it. And we're not going to make a killing on this at all. The question of whether we did conduct some animal testing is going to be looming for those
Yeah.
companies who have animal testing policies.
Sure.
But then if you look at the benefit to humanity in terms of doing two small dermal and normal metabolic studies in rats, what that means in terms of the potential to prevent skin cancer in
Hmm.
humans,
Hmm.
and the hurt and anguish that comes about of
Hmm.
families and people that have to go through that, it's incomparable. I mean, I'm definitely not animal testing. I've developed policies against it, but in this case, I think there's a good reason for doing it. The risk, the benefits outweigh the risks by a mile, if not more.
Hmm.
So we're hoping that companies will, at least the small companies are very open to this. They're much more um, pragmatic, much more fast moving, and I think
Hmm.
several large companies too. But once it takes hold, I think you'll have three grass ingredients. The grass status will probably be prominent in terms
Hmm.
of being vetted by FDA
Oh, absolutely.
under the gold standard. Nothing else has been vetted to this extent ever,
Yep.
and not even the minimal filters.
Hmm.
They just FDA said, well, they're not absorbed, so they're good to go.
Hmm.
And this one has all the data behind it.
Hmm.
Even in those, we've even gone to Australia and Canada looking at their databases where they collect adverse events. Um, from products, and in addition to the clinical studies that we have done in dermal and pharmacokinetic, we see no indication of any adverse events at all from the
So
use of
even
this.
additional safety information then, besides what you've already submitted to the FDA, we have the post-marketing adverse event reporting that's required in certain countries and showing that when used on thousands upon thousands upon thousands of
Yep,
people, we just don't see any increased safety
yep,
signals or issues that have arisen. So yet another set of data that should give people more security in the safety of this novel UV filter that again has been out and being used in ex-US for 20 plus years. So I just think, Carl, this is one of the most exciting things that's happened in dermatology in a long time, quite frankly, to finally have a new filter that is, again, a long UV filter that covers a spectrum that's chemical, so it doesn't leave that white sheen and have some of the other issues related to the mineral filters is is truly something that's going to be revolutionary for us, and it's just so sorely needed. So
yep.
that's also why I wanted to highlight all the work you and DSM are doing. But if we can just spend a couple of minutes talking about DSM, because it's one of those companies that's kind of in the background of dermatology and health and beauty that the consumer certainly, and probably most dermatologists don't really know about. But it is, as a contract manufacturer, you supply the novel ingredients that are used in many of the formulations that are available today.
Yeah, well, we not only we innovate, and
Mm-hmm.
we create molecules.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're the science behind the product, right?
Right.
And one of the areas we focus is on UV filters. Obviously, we have a whole palette of global UV filters, which are used throughout the world. And it's a very large stable of products, which are not available in the United States. We also manufacture those which are used currently under the OTC monograph. But we go beyond that. We're into skincare. We're into fragrances as well, and that's Firmenich.
Mm-hmm.
But we make a lot of different things in terms of peptides. We design peptides. We have peptide libraries where we can create new peptides targeting different things. We're involved in senolytics,
Mm-hmm.
and we target senescent cells to rejuvenate aging skin. And this is a new ingredient, Eat Well Youth, which has won numerous awards throughout the world last year and this year, and it looks to be a mover and shaker in terms of, being an option now, which can be used to further reduce skin aging, lines and wrinkles in a very short
Mm-hmm.
period of time.
Mm-hmm.
We make vitamins. We're the largest manufacturer of vitamins in the world. Okay, we make the vitamin C, the vitamin B, all the different vitamins, which right now vitamin B3 niacinamide
Mm-hmm.
is very hot, and
Mm-hmm.
we're selling that and making that to the highest degrees of purity, looking at sustainable practices in manufacturing. Everything that we do, we use a lot of natural ingredients. We use biotechnology, moving away from our organic synthesis, and taking into account sustainable beauty. We're even now moving into what I call design to market, which we're designing formulations specifically tailored to briefs that were provided by companies, and we're looking at indie brands, derms,
Okay.
and we have three levels. We have a basic, intermediate, and advanced formulation where we will put together a formula with manufacturing options that are tailored to meet whatever endpoint you want to meet using clinical data that has been generated by us. We actually do and invest in clinical data and substantiate our claims. So we go beyond just the molecule. We do the science, the regulatory, the clinical work. We substantiate it scientifically and publish the results, and we support everything we do in that nature, whereby a simple manufacturer will only either put it together and utilize others people's or companies' data to substantiate what needs to be done. So we're very deeply embedded within the skincare industry in terms of making sure that you have skin wellness, and wellness is now kind of the new buzzword with advanced ingredients, and we have market leadership in different types of products, hyaluronic acid, UV filter protection, pentavitin, vitamins, and then the combination of these ingredients, which create synergistic effects which help you target different
Sure.
skin problems in a way that you can't really get to with one product on the market, or you have to buy two products. But it's really exciting because we're into barrier repair, we're into microbiome, all these cutting edge stuff which consumers don't really understand, but we're creating the runway whereby we can now start launching products in those areas and really facilitating skincare in a way that hasn't been done before. It's beyond fillers, right?
Yeah.
we're using the actual skin mechanisms to
Yeah,
create.
let me just jump in. So, I mean, the agenda of our conference is essentially everything that you guys are doing, as you, as you mentioned
Yeah,
everything. In regards to the vitamins in particular, we don't have a lot of time here, but in regards to the vitamins, I mean, one of the issues that the consumer has with vitamins is, of course, we just don't know. There's no regulation in regards to these vitamins and supplements, and how do we know that what we are purchasing actually contains the active ingredients and they aren't tainted with other possibly harmful ingredients as well? Knowing the high standards that DSM has for
yeah.
all of the product manufacturing, is there a way for the consumer to determine which vitamins, for example, are made by DSM and which ones are not?
Well, I mean, I think being transparent, is kind of something that we're very much in tune with. And the fact is that for our vitamin B3, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin D, we do have safety data, and we do not. And we have levels that are levels of the ingredients that are approved either for leave on or rinse off, where we
Hmm.
support based upon the risk assessment and safety assessments. Everything that we do is substantiated from a regulatory safety point of view.
Oh yeah.
So it's compliant with regulations, especially OMAR now in the United States.
How would the consumer know though if that vitamin is made by your company or another?
Well, I think the trade name, what happens is on the label you have the inky name, right?
Uh huh.
So the inky name is a standardized name which is
Sure.
only pertinent to that ingredient in
Ingredient.
terms
Yep.
of form and CAPS number, et cetera. So there's no way to really know about who
Okay.
manufactures it, because a lot of the company that's making the product does not necessarily reveal it, because one, they can get it cheaper and maybe that company may not have the same standards, but it's still an
Hmm.
inky name, right?
Hmm.
So I think one of the things that we're trying to do under this design to market is that we have now a way to communicate to customers what that data is, and maybe
Okay.
have a library by which derms can present it to the patients, or in general consumers, what is the safety behind it. And it's important for people to know that, because you look at allergens, you look at all the different things, impurities, which are harmful potentially, and you can make decisions based upon the quality. And it's our mission basically to incorporate things at the highest level of purity. And in many cases, we'll have ingredients which are much more pure than those other ones being marketed and sold for the cosmetics industry. And I think a lot of that's going to change in the next year, because at least in the United States, given that we now have a new regulation for cosmetics, which is going to institute
Sure.
GMPs, right, good
Yes.
manufacturing practices.
Yep.
They've already instituted the safety substantiation portion of it. But once you start getting into the GMP, you're going to start seeing that there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to go out of business
Yep.
simply because they can't manufacture to the level of purity that's required on the GMP, or demonstrate that the product has been done there. So there's going to be a lot of help that's going to be required. We're going to be there to help them. The fact that all our ingredients are produced under GMP because they're European based is important, because they're already compliant with GMP, right? And
Hmm.
we're using USP standards for testing in terms of making sure that we use the methods that are currently on the pharmacopoeia to generate what is necessary in order to people have peace of mind when they use the ingredient. And
It's a
the
great point.
companies selling this product will use that as a competitive advantage as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
communicating that is another issue in terms of the social media part of it,
Hmm.
which is currently going crazy, but we're involved there as well, and trying to bring out a little bit more balance with regards to what is true and what is a misconception. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that's really important too. But we try to do what we can in many different ways, using different approaches. It can be web based, it can be social media based, it can be technical presentations. It can be papers. All this all contributes to the foundation of supporting the ingredients in the way that they should be supported and approved for use.
Well, just to highlight that, I think we have been, for most of what we were talking about, we've been throwing shade on the FDA. But to be clear, though, the recent act that is kind of mandating the good manufacturing practices for these supplements and for skincare as well, and for beauty, is really important. Adverse event reporting is also included in that. So I think that the whole level of safety is going to be elevated because of that, and that is something that we definitely need to give kudos to the FDA to recognize that we are behind as a nation, behind the EU and many of these safety acts, and finally catching up. But
Yeah.
Carl, look, I can't thank you enough for your time, and honestly, just wanted to highlight the great work that DSM is doing, not only for BEMT and bringing a new filter that's sorely needed to the United States, but also as I dived more into the website and talking with you about what DSM is doing. It's just really interesting for improving safety, and that design to market idea is also really, I find that fascinating. And certainly if I was a derm or someone interested in developing my own line, partnering with a company like DSM seems like a no-brainer to me.
No, we're more than happy, to share our technology, our expertise, our knowledge, and I think that's the whole thing, right? We have over 100 scientists in Switzerland doing innovation. We have safety studies, and we can substantiate what we sell. Whereas I don't know if many other companies,
Sure.
except for a few of the larger ones, can do that. But having all that in terms of ammunition to put forward to developing new formulations is great. And then having third-party endorsements of the product and approvals in terms of vegan, halal, eco, all those add credibility and transparency is what the customer wants. They
Mm-hmm.
want to know that they're buying something that they can feel as though it's safe and they don't have to worry about anything bad happening. And that can be for the entire family, right? It's not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
for adults, but children as well.
Absolutely.
And that's our mission. And I think now we're kind of moving away from, just offering this to the large mega consumer companies, and now offering to the smaller companies who might not have had that opportunities before, and the
Yeah.
derms as well, because they're the front line in terms of preventing disease and offering patients solutions
Absolutely.
to skincare issues.
Well, again, thank you, Carl. So this is Skincare Confidential, and again, the idea for this podcast is to give our listener a 360-degree view of the skincare industry, and what better way than highlighting companies, contract manufacturing companies such as DSM, who are really investing in the health of our nation, and really improving the safety of all of beauty and healthcare. So I really appreciate what DSM is doing. And when I found out more about it, I wanted to highlight that on Skincare Confidential. So thank you again, Carl. My name is Dr. Ted Lain, and thank you so much for listening. Please, if you've enjoyed this episode, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and refer us to a friend as well. We appreciate you listening. Thank you.